Hello, this is Strategy Miscellany, and this is episode 1 of a Children of a Dead Earth campaign. So what is Children of a Dead Earth? It is a space combat simulation game that is advertised as being the most accurate computer game for that on the market, and I think that's probably true. Everything is at least trying to be based on real-life physics. You've got delta V calculations, you've got an n-body physics simulation where all the different uh, major bodies in the solar system at least are affecting your ship. So if you're around the moon, it's being affected by not just the moon's gravity, but also by the Earth and the sun's gravity also. And something that I think is really interesting about it is once you get far enough into the campaign, it lets you start designing your own spaceships out of the stock modules, and then even designing your own modules. So you can even build your own nuclear reactor for a ship, and then build your own radiator to radiate the heat off it, and then build your own coil gun to fire shells using the capacity of the nuclear reactor that you built. So let us begin. So, why is it called Children of a Dead Earth? Well, basically, it's set in about 2250, and back in about 2150, there was a World War III between essentially a vaguely defined Soviet faction and a vaguely defined East Asian power. And this got really out of hand. They started doing things like using nuclear weapons to melt the Earth's ice caps and dropping asteroids. And this eventually caused the Earth to go into a runaway greenhouse effect. I'm not quite sure of the science behind that, but I mean, maybe there was already a global warming problem and this just pushed it over the edge even more with the ice caps melting, and then the impact I would think would really cause a winter, but I don't know for sure. Anyway, the point is, that's the backstory. The survivors are, well, children of a dead Earth. We are the Republic of the Free People, which is a faction that has been grown out of basically several South and Southeast Asian powers, India, Pakistan, Indonesia, the Philippines. We all had to work together, and I believe India at least had access to a space elevator, and that's how we got a lot of people off planet. So we begin with kind of a training mission here, where basically there's a damaged cargo freighter. We have to go refuel it and then take it home. And we're orbiting the moon. And so this is our cargo freighter. You can see they don't really armor these because they're not ever supposed to see combat. This is our methane tanker. Looks pretty similar. Though it has these big radiators because there's a big nuclear reactor on it, I think to power the refueling systems, probably, so that it can pump a lot of stuff at once. And then we've got this methane depot. That's our station. It's got little crew compartments on the front and the back, and then a ton of methane in the middle. So here we are. First they want to teach us the controls, so we'll go ahead and do that here. Rolling I honestly don't use very much, but occasionally. Alright, so we zoom out, we go find Earth. As you can see, Earth don't look so good. Looks a lot like Venus. We go back to Luna. And something that is cool is that you can see the cities on the night side of inhabited celestial bodies. The graphics are generally not anything to write home about, but that part's pretty cool. So this is our cargo freighter. You can see it's out at Delta V. And then over here, our methane tanker and our methane depot. So now we're going to refuel the methane tanker. And also get it ready to fly out on its own. The refueling is happening with a long hose. When you design your refueling modules, you'll see how that works. So it auto skips to the methane tanker being full once you zoom out. But we're still going to move the turn forward an hour so we can see how everything looks. You can see the cargo freighter is slower because it's further out and moving in a slower orbit. That's 6 hours. We basically almost go around the moon in 6 hours. Our orbital period is 6 hours, 18 minutes. So now we select the tanker, and we can start a trajectory. And so this is where we stop doing station keeping burns and we're just kind of coasting. In our case right now, that doesn't really change much because we're pretty close to the moon. We're not being dragged too much relatively by the sun or the Earth. But we can pick a point here to start maneuvering at. And then we've got these 3 thrust handles. So this is for out-of-plane maneuvers. We don't need to do those in this case. We're all in the same plane. The green is for linear or radial burns, where you kind of are burning directly inwards or outwards, and it sort of twists the shape of your orbit. You can see. And then red is the one we really need right now. That's for accelerating or decelerating tangential to our orbit. And that's how you get out into a wider orbit, into a narrower orbit. Or if you do it too much, you crash into the moon. So let's get ourselves into an orbit that gets out to theirs. And we'll hit OK. And then there is a faster way to do this, but this is how they want to train it. So we're going to match their orbit. So basically we're going to do a first burn here, then we're going to do a second burn here, and we'll be in the same orbit as them. So we move forward. Now the problem is they're behind us, and we're never going to catch up because we're in the same orbit. You can see there's a very slight change when we go to free fall trajectory. We're getting perturbed a little bit by the Earth. And let's say we pick a point here. And then what I'm going to do is move slowly inwards until we get a nice match with them. Oh, except for what am I thinking? We're ahead of them. We need to slow down a little bit, not back up. There we go. So there we've got a nice merger point. And now we can go to this point here, and we can basically have our Ensign plot a merger course here instead of having to do that last bit manually. So now we run forwards, go ahead and go up to 6 hours. And you can see we moved slowly into a wider orbit than them so that they slowly catch up. And now we're actually going to merge with them here. So now we're the same fleet. So of course the next step is to refuel the cargo freighter and get it ready to go home. For now, in this case, we'll leave the methane tanker out here. It still has tons of Delta V. It might go out to another planet or something. So here's our cargo freighter. And what they tell you to do in this case, they teach you a little trick. You can actually set the frame of reference how you want. So we could have it relative to the Earth, and you can see we're spiraling around the moon. But more importantly, we can set it relative to the methane depot itself. And so you can see it's like we're in a depot-centric universe. Basically, everything is relative to the methane depot, and we get closer or further away. So now, we just have to figure out a way to merge with them. Basically, we just have to get our orbit close enough here. This might work well. As you can see, sometimes you bump thrust handles when you're trying to move them, and you end up with a radical shift in orbit that you don't really want. It is a little bit frustrating sometimes. You'll get used to it as you play it more. It's probably not quite as user-friendly as Kerbal Space Program's system, but it does have the n-body physics, so there is that. So, we can select the join icons, and you can see for not too much delta V, we're able to basically merge with them. You can see we get in close, and we're kind of matching where they are, and then we just do a little shift to our trajectory, and we end up matching them. So, let's go forward. They're catching up to us as we come in. We're kind of matching speed, and we're successful. And actually, that's the least delta V I've ever done this with. I got lucky with some of those trajectories. I have before beat it very quickly, and also with very little delta V, so I have the gold rating for doing both of those. You don't have to do them both at the same time, you can do them separately. So now, it'll let us do our first actual combat mission. So, we're out at Ganymede, largest moon of Jupiter, and the USTA, which is our main enemy, the United Sol Trade Alliance, they sort of developed out of the two factions back on Earth that went to war and destroyed the Earth. It's rather bizarre that they're all working together, but if you read their sort of backstory for them, the game's theory is that basically the most radical and dangerous members of both factions were most likely killed in the war, and the survivors decided to try and unify to avoid future wars. Unfortunately, they're still fighting a space Cold War with us. How much of that is our fault versus their fault, it's not really clear. And so, a small combat vessel, a laser skiff belonging to the USTA, attacked one of our cargo freighters. The USTA claims they've gone rogue. We think it might be a provocation from the high command of the USTA. So, we're going to blow up that warship. Or at least force them to surrender. We have a patrol ship here, which it's got these nice railguns, it's got some cannons, got a nuclear engine with burning methane. Or, not exactly burning methane, I should be clear. A nuclear engine, it's got a nuclear reactor to get it really hot. And then it runs the reaction mass through that. And the reaction mass goes flying out the back at high speed, almost like the burn products of a chemical rocket, except for often faster. And so it gets you better delta V per unit of weight. These haven't really flown too much in the real world, I don't think really at all in rocket form. Mostly because people are a little concerned about flying a nuclear reactor around. But it's definitely a believable enough technology that it got into this game. And it's how a lot of the ships work. Some of them still use chemical thrusters. A few use a more like an ion engine type thing, but that really doesn't work if you're going to be in any space battles because its thrust is extremely low. We are facing a laser skiff. Now, a laser skiff has one laser that can fire out of a lot of different points, a bunch of conventional cannons, some decoy blast launchers for dealing with missiles, which we don't have any of anyway. And it's a smaller ship, it's a weaker ship. Now you'll notice all the ships will have these radiators on them. The big radiators are typically to cool the nuclear power plant that's powering the whole ship. Lasers take a lot of power. Our railguns take a lot of power too. Conventional guns don't take much power, so you can build a conventional ship that doesn't have much of a reactor and so has smaller radiators. This can be an advantage because radiators are pretty easy to shoot off. And once, all your reactive radiators are shut off, your ship has no power, and you basically have to surrender. You're not going to be operating any weapons or anything anymore. So, there are some advantages to conventional guns like that. A disadvantage of conventional guns, however, is that if you hit them, the shells in there tend to be launched by high explosives, and so the mount can blow up, the turret can blow up, and damage the whole ship. kind of a Battle of Jutland scenario. So, we will go into the mission here.
Incoming transmission.
Alright. So here we are, here they are, here's Ganymede. Doesn't seem to be as populated as some of the other planets. Interesting. Well, it only has 11 million on it, I suppose. It looks like they're all in space stations around it. Now, you can see if you zoom out, we've got the whole Jovian system. In this mission, we won't be doing too much with it. But it does mean that your orbit can be perturbed by Jupiter, because Jupiter is, as you may know, very big, very massive. And so it can make these free fall trajectories a little bit wild. Okay. So what I'm going to do...
Incoming transmission.
So I could just intercept them right here. But instead what I'm going to do is zoom out kind of here. You can see where we're being pulled by Jupiter. Because we're just burning, we should normally just be widening the apoapsis, but it's getting yanked around by Jupiter enough that we would actually escape the system well before you might expect. Now this actually looks pretty good. We're right by them, and then we can do an intercept right here. And the good news is, yeah, we're basically straight on them, closest approach of 2 kilometers. Velocity's not too bad. We should have a lot of time to use our greater range railguns to attack them without them being able to effectively retaliate. Now, in later missions, they would be dodging right now, trying to come up with a better intercept for them or just get away from us. They are the weaker ship. But yeah, this mission is still kind of a tutorial. They don't do that yet.
Incoming transmission.
So, here we are. We start paused. There's us, there's them, there's our range. You can see we're almost in range with our railguns. And if we look at them, they are still far out of effective range with both of these. Now, you can use your weapons outside of effective range, and it's often a good idea to just get more stuff flying down range and hope for some lucky shots. It's often the right thing to do, and sometimes the AI will even be smart enough to do it. So we're going to follow what they tell us to do in this case, and we're going to start by doing a homing order where we're flying straight towards them. And we have to target one of their systems. And I'm going to target their cannons, because like I said, these can blow up when you hit them and do more damage to the ship. Now, typically, I really like to target more than one at once. I don't really agree with their advice. You should only target one, especially for larger battles. But let's go back to our ship and watch it do its stuff. It's got one nuclear engine in the back that's now firing, because we are flying straight towards them. And we've gone into range. It auto-paused for us. And what we need to do, this ship, like a lot of the stock ships, is designed to be like an old-time sailing ship. So it has to orient broadside a little bit to actually fire its guns. Now, once you start designing your own things, and a few of the stock ships have this too, you can build ships that are able to fire straight on, or fire while flying straight on, and you can build ships that are designed to be asymmetric broadsiders, where they've got one side with all the weapons, the other side is all the fragile stuff like radiators and is less armored. And then it just, turns broadside and fires everything at the enemy from one side instead of having some of its guns unable to fire and some of its radiators vulnerable. Those are both totally legitimate ways to design a ship. But a lot of the stock ships don't have that. I believe there was a change that allowed the guns to have a wider firing arc, though, than they used to. So this one will not have to turn very much before it starts firing, as you'll see. I'm going to orient broadside. And because I've oriented broadside, we're already firing at them. And we can watch our shots coming in. You can see we're maybe not leading them by enough here. We're hitting them kind of on the back. That's okay, though. We'll probably hit the radiators with some. Or hopefully... Yeah, look at that. We've very much damaged both their radiators. That's going to make it a lot harder for them to do anything. Basically, what we need to do...
Incoming transmission.
He just took out a cannon. You can see one radiator disabled, one cannon disabled. Also, one of their propulsion tanks, which is why their ship started spinning there. We hit one of their methane tanks and it shot some methane out and spun the ship around a little bit. So, basically what's going to happen to disable your ships is either all your weapons get shot off, or all your radiators get shot off, all the big ones for the nuclear reactor, or the smaller ones, which are harder to hit, that keep the waste heat out of the crew compartment. And once neither of those happens, you're basically dead in space. Have to surrender. Or you can have a critical system hit on the inside, like you can have your nuclear reactors destroyed, you can have your crew module depressurized. Apparently they don't wear spacesuits in there, which is a little odd. And once one of those happens, your ship is out of the fight. So really a lot of it is kind of waiting for a lucky shot sometimes. But we are doing a pretty good job on them here. And as you can see, I think we just hit their reactor, or... No, we really did. We hit their last radiator. We hit their last radiator that was sending the waste heat out from the nuclear reactor. Now they can't power anything on their ship. And so they have struck their colors, as it were, and we have won. And you can see alive and unscathed all our ships. If we want to get gold on this one, we're going to have to do it really fast, which I haven't done yet. So the next mission is going to teach us how to do plane changes, where their orbit is in a different plane than ours. And we'll do that one next episode, as well as some more, but we'll leave it here for this episode. Thank you all very much for watching, and have a great day.